Welcome to the Urgency of Awareness podcast. I'm Jody Farr.
And I'm your girl, Nita Renee.
Join us as we take the topic of health, grab those concepts that we learned in season 1 and apply them as we discuss things like food, where we live, how that affects our health, and the dietitian field.
And as always, capacity builders, we're going to be looking at this from an individual, community, and institutional lens.
Come on in.
Come ride with us.
Welcome, capacity builders. Question for you today is, what health fad did you participate in? Or let me break it down. What food did you specifically eat because you thought it was healthy, only to years later have the dietitian, nutrition world tell us that it was unhealthy? And if you lived long enough, only to find out it was healthy again. What food was that for you? Come on in and join us.
Jody, you and these questions. Oh my gosh. Okay, first of all, I've never did a fad. I'm not a fad chick. But something that was healthy, and then I thought it was healthy, and then it wasn't healthy, and then it was. I don't even know what to eat these days, to be honest with you. Like, I heard now we got chicken in the lab, so I don't literally know what to say to this question. So what you
it's
thinking?
so funny you mentioned chicken, because that's a big one for me was eggs. Like eggs, I don't know your age, but man, I grew up eating eggs. We ate eggs all the time. It was a staple because you're in the country. And then eggs become horrible for you. And my uncle, and may I say the skinny uncle, had high cholesterol, which we're like, oh, if he's got high cholesterol, we're all dying, right? But the doctor told him to stop eating eggs. Right? It didn't affect his cholesterol at all. And then I lived long enough, now eggs are good for you again. But now it's gotten even crazy and ridiculous because it can't just be an egg. It's got to be an egg from a chicken that has been petted without any stress, organic, and has walked in a field where rainbows are over the top of it in order to be healthy. No offense, Maya, but you feel kind of messing us up.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned Maya, because again, we have in the studio today Maya Feller. Thank you so much for being here with us. Help us with this.
Okay, I'll do my best. Hi, I'm Maya Feller, and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I've got a private practice in Brooklyn, and we work with people who have cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, and diabetes. And my work is from a lens of cultural humility. What does that mean? It means that you, the individual, are the expert in your lived experience, and I, the dietitian, am the expert in the nutrition science. Together, myself and my team bridge the two, and we create a nutrition prescription that's not only applicable to you, the individual, but one that's also sustainable.
So Maya, talk to us, because you are representing the dietitian, nutrition field. I know you say you're an outlier within it, but there's just conflicting information, especially if you live long enough.
Yes.
You know, eggs are horrible, eggs are good. Then and it seems like it's getting, like, it can't just be an egg now. It has to be a whole nother level of an egg,
Yes.
which people just don't have access to.
Yes, that's the truth. Okay, so I think that there are a couple of levels and reasons why we get this mashup of info that is conflicting.
Yeah, talk to us.
Talk to us.
I'm going to take it back to the data. So in the US, much of the recommendations that we have for our health come from NHANES. So that's a national, it's a survey, right?
Okay.
Say
Not a
again,
person.
what is it?
Yeah,
It's called
exactly.
NHANES.
And Haynes.
Right? And so you put this in the show notes, the NHANES link. So much of the data comes from NHANES, and this is this survey that happens over a set period of time.
Okay.
The nutrition information is gathered from what we refer to as 24-hour recalls. A 24-hour recall or survey actually asks the individual, Nita, what did you have yesterday for breakfast?
Okay.
Could you tell me, or this is how I do it in my practice, what was the first meal of the day that you had yesterday, and do you remember the contents of your meal?
Okay.
You may or you may not.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Imagine we do that with 20,000 people.
Oh.
And then we're like, oh, we're going to use this data to make recommendations about what people are actually eating. What if you didn't remember right?
Exactly.
Right.
Because I probably won't.
I still haven't remembered.
Right.
I'm like, I'm still trying to answer it in my head.
So there's some question about how these surveys are run. There's also questions about language, and then there's questions about populations like older individuals, and then there's questions about people from marginalized communities. Are we really getting sample data that is representative of this country?
Of all the
That's
identities.
good.
Right, all the identities. So that's number one.
And who's creating those questions? Because a lot of times when it's
Come
any
on,
survey,
speak it.
it's a lot of normalized dominant experience, and how I'm going to word a question is going to be very different than a different experience from someone else.
Yeah.
But then imagine if that's how we're making our dietary guidelines.
Isn't that how y'all make them?
It is. It is actually exactly how we do, right? So then we're relying on this data that might not be as robust and airtight as we want it to be.
And is inclusive.
And it's far from inclusive.
I mean, that's like the food chart that we had when we was kids, right?
Right, exactly, right.
I still know it was a triangle. It was a pyramid.
But so here's the thing, is now we have My Plate, and the big beef with My Plate is that we don't eat in compartments.
Right.
So if you're supposed to have half your plate as a non-starchy vegetable, a quarter of your plate as a protein, and then a quarter of your plate as a starch. But what if you eat a bowl? How do you compartmentalize all those things, right? So that's another kind of challenging point.
Well, when you said the plate, I'm like, well, I can do that. I'll just cut my steak up and I'll stack it up high, and it will be in this 1/4 piece. You know what I mean? I was like, I'll make it work.
But so here's the thing, is that the data sets that we're using are not fantastic. Yeah. The recommendations are not fantastic. And then there's this huge swath in between where you have, American Heart Association running research, and then you have American Cancer Society running research, and then you have this organization, WHO, World Health Organization, running research. And so, wait a second, suddenly you've got all of these people using different types of ways to gather data and come to conclusions, while having people from all walks of life say, you need to follow this recommendation. It's a mashup. So then I feel like American Heart Association, respectfully, was kind of late to the game in saying that eggs were not the demon that we thought that they were. And then it took even more time for the cholesterol guidelines to be updated to reflect the new data. So then you've got ex-doctor and dietitian over here saying, actually, American public, eggs are fine. And then they go to the accrediting body and they say, actually, it says here that I need to limit my cholesterol intake to 200 milligrams per day. And then we say, but wait a second, hold on, you don't. And then we go back to the old bad data. And then there's the physician's health study and the nurse's health study. Wait a second, did you say physicians and nurses? So why are you studying physicians and nurses to then tell me, the general public, how I'm meant to eat? Physicians and nurses tend to be highly educated, upper middle class white people. Wait, that's not representative of the US. What is going on here?
That's crazy.
Right? So this is how we end up, and that's an oversimplification, I understand.
Yes.
But this is how we end up with this mashup. And then don't let me add the ticky-tacky.
Don't add the
ticky-tacky TikTok that just got banned. But when you add the TikTok, which is the largest search engine in the US, and suddenly Auntie May on the left is telling you to do X, Y, and Z because her cousin Ned told her that it was good and it worked for her, and it goes viral. And then everybody is doing what Auntie May and Uncle Ned were doing.
Yeah. And Auntie May, because there's such a mismatch between all the institutions you just named and how they're collecting their data, that I'm more attracted to Auntie May because
she's
looks
relatable.
More like, she's relatable. She looked more like me. She's talking like me. Like, you know what? And you all contradicting yourself over here anyway. So, you know what I mean? So we sometimes, because of how the organizations and those institutions operate,
Right.
it almost pushes us to listen more to Auntie May.
Auntie May.
Because
Right.
I'm sorry, she getting me more than you are getting me.
Right.
Not you, but you know,
Right,
these
the
things are
people
getting me.
out-
So,
yes.
you know, it worked for Nedberg.
But then here's the thing also, then add a scoring system like NOVA. That's a food classification system, right? Because we love to classify food as this is good and this is bad, because we like to live in the binary, because then we know what we're doing. So if this is good, then I act good and I'm therefore good. And if this is bad, then I'm acting bad and I'm therefore bad. And then the food classification system backs up our binary thinking. However, there are faults. There are faults. Because when we're talking about a food being quantifiably good, there are a lot of factors that have to come into play. And so what ends up happening is that the general public doesn't have the base nutrition education to be able to dissect the faults within some of these classification systems.
Because there's so many components to going into what a good food would be.
Exactly.
Right?
Let me
Yeah.
use yogurt, for example.
Yeah.
So,
And before you go there,
Yeah.
I want to talk to listeners about how often do we do this? Like when you said is we make it binary. We make food either good or bad. And then I love what you did. So then if we eat what we deemed as bad food, we feel bad about ourselves.
Feel
Right.
bad, yeah.
Right, which is like, oh, I can have treat, you know, we have a Friday night tends to be our, oh, we can have pizza night.
You mentioned the treat day.
Yeah, treat day.
Cheat day.
Cheat day. And but then if I do it on Saturday again, I eat that, what I look at as a bad food. Now I'm like, oh man, crap, the whole weekend's gone, so I'm going to just eat anything I want.
there you go. But what if,
Right.
Jody,
Yeah.
what if
So
there were
good.
a world where you had pizza and,
I'm listening.
right?
Yes.
And pizza was just a part of the routine,
Yes.
and you rounded it out with other things. So that when you had pizza, it was then rounded out with more nutrient dense options
Yes.
that are culturally relevant. If you're
long
my
as you ain't
father
putting-
and
yeah.
he's Haitian, it's going to be always an avocado.
No.
Yeah, that's a, right? But I'm just saying,
I'm
like,
with your daddy.
you know,
Yeah.
like what if that's how we approach the activity of eating?
Yeah, one might say a both and.
Exactly.
Yeah, that we every meal is going to have both low nutritional, low density or low.
I
you use
wouldn't
the
even
word-
refer to it as that. What
Oh,
I would say
yeah.
is,
Correct me.
well, right?
No,
So
but-
here's the thing. So what I would say is, okay, you're choosing to have pizza. It's something that you enjoy.
Yes.
Pizza at its base is flour, water, salt, cheese, tomato sauce, right? Sometimes there are other toppings depending on who you are and what you like.
Right.
More cheese.
Right.
We're from the Midwest.
You're
Then there's
choo-
more cheese.
And more cheese. But so let's say you choose to have that. We know alone a slice of pizza is not doing anything harmful to anyone,
That's so good to know.
right? The challenge is when a pie of pizza becomes the center of our pattern of eating on a consistent basis. Saying that there's space for a variety of foods doesn't mean that we forget that we really have to have nutrient-dense options as a staple in the pattern of eating. And you'll notice that I'm not naming particular foods. What I'm talking about is foods that are going to deliver vitamins and minerals, your macronutrients, your protein, fats, and carbohydrates in packages that are beneficial for your overall health. That's going to be different for every single person. That's going to go back to social determinants of health. What do you have access to? What are your finances? What is your emotional bandwidth? And once we remove the category and the hierarchy around this is good and this is bad, we can then start to have a conversation about how do we create meals that deliver nutrient-rich packages to the individual.
Because go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it's just I'm so on this journey right now. So when I hear you, part of me is also thinking about like how, like you mentioned individually, the things that my body does not agree with, I have to then adjust. Because what y'all might say is good does not work with my body.
Exactly.
And then the other thing is, where am I getting real food with real nutrition is the other challenge outside of the farmers markets, right? And even when I go to the farmers markets, I'm still unsure of if it has nutrition in it or if it's
So one of my
all the other
patients
stuff.
said something to me that I loved. So like I thought that this was the most brilliant thing. And they said, well, a vegetable in any form has been grown for you, so you should enjoy it. And I was like, that's a period statement. A vegetable in any form has been grown for you, therefore you should enjoy it. So if you're at the farmer's market and the farmer grew that vegetable, farmers only grow things that they would feed their families. The U.S. food supply is incredibly safe.
Yeah.
Right? We are growing things, and we want actually food to be grown in this country, because when we start to have food shortages, you want stuff grown here. You want to make sure that we have access from within our borders.
Okay.
So if you go to the farmer's market, enjoy whatever's there.
Cool.
When you go to the grocery store, love up that frozen section. Don't be afraid to get into the center of the grocery store. I say, go to the grocery store and the whole store is available to you. From the outside to the inside, to the top to the bottom.
And that's so different, because I always hear, oh, you should just be buying from the outside of the grocery store.
Well, if that's your case, I hope you have time to wash, chop, and eat everything that you have made. Because that's the truth.
And that's what I want for myself to recognize, and listeners, is when we make these statements, how are we unintentionally excluding and making some foods bad and excluding a whole bunch of folks? Because I know in my family and friends, people can't go to the farmer's market.
Right.
They can't afford it. They can't go. I mean, just, so, but if people would look at, like you said, that every vegetable is a good vegetable, then they'd be proud and feel happy when they make that can of green beans.
Exactly.
Whereas right now, sometimes people are like, oh yeah, it's all, they feel bad about it. Well, if you feel bad about it, then,
And then here's the thing too, Jody. This is what I always say. So you have to know your baseline health. If you're working with any food and you're working from the perspective that you have a metabolic condition, you're thinking about your blood sugars, you're thinking about your blood pressure, you're thinking about your cholesterol, you can always modify. You have your can of beans. Canned beans tend to be higher in sodium. If you have access, you can look for a lower sodium option. If you don't, you can rinse the can. It'll cut down a significant amount, up to 40%, maybe even a little more if you get aggressive with the rinsing, right? But you can modify. I think problems with the messaging is that we've created this binary hierarchy so that people then don't eat. And the truth is, they're like, you know what, to hell with it all.
Absolutely.
I'm going to center my life around the things that are very convenient, and I'm not going to take the time to do anything else.
I think,
and I'm careful with that, right? Because it's also, I want to be careful when I say I'm not going to take the time, right? It is also because society has said to them, well, you're not making the right choice.
Exactly.
And so they're like, you know what? Making the right choice is so hard. I'm just going to stick with what's really easy.
Yeah, I'm going to making the right choice.
As it's been. Right choice.
Yeah, right, with air quotes, as it's been presented to me.
Exactly.
Is so hard that I'm going to eat what's convenient, and then I think what makes me feel good.
Right.
And just forget it.
Right.
Whereas because I like what you're saying, because we made food this binary, it's either good or bad.
Right.
And then when we do that, and we participate in that, we are very much isolating some folks. They'll never be able to, get access to that.
Right. And also, let's be real. In marginalized communities,
Oh.
the majority of the foods that are available and accessible are very high in added sugars, fats, and salts.
Absolutely.
So we're not saying that we want you to be waking up and eating cupcakes. That's not the conversation.
Right.
Right? This is not, said no one ever, right?
Right.
But the conversation is, when you eat what's accessible, how do you make sure that that's actually beneficial to your body when there's structures and systems that are in place that don't give you choice?
So how do you?
Well, it's interesting. I am a lover of dollar stores. I am a lover of dollar stores. And every time I travel in this country, I go through the dollar stores and I see what's available. And believe it or not, there are plenty of choices. And I think one of the things, I like your pause button, is that when we have the space and the time to actually give a pause. And if you're walking into a grocery store that you've never been before, and you're there for a deal, take a pause and do a lap and see what there is. And then then the second pause is go to the center. I know people think, oh, I'm going to go to the exterior first, but I'm like, no, there's tons of stuff in there. You have your cereal grains, you've got your rice, you've got your beans, you've got your pastas. Like, no, go to the center. And I want you to build a pantry of lower cost items that are filled with nutrition. Because those can be rounded out with anything in the grocery store. You have your tinned fish in the center, you've got your canned beans in the center, you've got your dry beans, you've got your brown rice, you've got your cereals, you've got your granolas, you've got your mueslis, and don't be afraid of a store brand. I love a store brand, right? Just because it doesn't have the brand name doesn't mean that it's not a good thing.
Doesn't have nutrition.
Exactly. And also turn off the external noise.
That's hard.
Right? The external noise of, I shouldn't be eating this thing because it is a starch or cereal grain.
Yeah.
Guess what? You have to eat things that have nutrient density that actually have conversation with you on a cellular level.
No, that's deep.
I always go to the starters like, no starches.
Oh.
But see, your
So all the potatoes.
cellular,
Oh my
whatever she
gosh.
said is not getting met.
Literally.
Whatever she said.
That
is not
cellular
getting met.
thing. But you know, but your body, right? Your cellular, you have to have, and that's just it. It's like, okay, well, I can eat what they're saying is good, but I don't feel, I have no connection to it. I don't feel good. It's not, and so you drop it, you know, and yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. If I'm faced...
Don't be judging me when I eat my
I'm
starch.
sure that you know when I come to the house
Okay.
what it is.
All right, continue on.
But you could have your potatoes.
You always have good stuff.
I
though.
do. Yeah.
I can have my potatoes.
You have your potatoes. Potatoes are going to give you potassium, you're going to get vitamin C, you're going to get some fiber. I mean, potatoes are wonderful.
That's not what they told me.
What?
Remember what they said about the eggs? Okay.
There you
that's
go.
what we're learning.
But this is the whole thing, is that we're in this state of paralysis
Yeah.
around what to eat and what to not eat. And then there's not really messaging around the foods that are convenience foods that are true celebration foods, right? There was a time when slow foods took time. When my
Man.
grandmother would make a
Them
dish,
beans?
it took time. But if you can go out and you can get something that was a celebration food at the ready every single day, that changes, truthfully, what your body is interacting with. And if you live in a place where that does not get rounded out with other nutrient-dense options, unfortunately, metabolic dysfunction, whether we want it, and that's the thing.
Man.
And let's just say too, there are other factors at play, right? So are you moving? Are you able to move? Can you sleep? Are you able to sleep?
That's the biggest thing I hear a lot with the girls is they're not sleeping.
Really? They say why?
And
Or
they're always tired.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they have no clue.
Yeah.
I mean, our youth are super stressed. They're more stressed than we all understand. I mean, it's a very stressful time.
And they're
But
definitely not eating the way you're talking because
No.
parents are on the go, so they're
Yep.
getting it as they, as they're able to get it.
yes,
Well,
yeah,
especially
Yeah.
nutrition dense.
Absolutely, and they're subject to all the messages that we are all getting about what food is good or isn't good.
I mean, think about the start of the day. Like,
And their school food.
At-
Just to throw that in there.
oh,
They're
well,
not satisfied with school food.
yeah, I mean, I know. Well, think about the start of the day, right? So I've got 2 kids, and every morning my daughter has a bowl of cereal with milk, and every morning my son has breakfast that I make him. So it varies. And if she doesn't have milk with cereal, she actually has waffles topped with yogurt and maple syrup. If she didn't eat that, and she goes to an independent school, so there's a chef and everything, so it's different. But if she didn't eat that, and she were in a situation where she could stop at a deli to get food on the way to school, what's in the deli? Usually packaged shelf-stable items that actually have low nutrition density. I'm not saying that the package is bad. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the nutrients that I want my kids starting the day with? I want her to sit down and have a bowl of cereal with milk. Why? I know she's getting the full vitamin mineral profile. She's getting calcium and vitamin D. She's getting whole grains, and so she's starting her day well. Or her waffle with yogurt and maple syrup. It is the opposite of what we've been told. People are like, that's an unhealthy breakfast. But wait a second. In New York City, for kids who don't eat breakfast, I know for sure that they're having a quarter water, which is a little water that's like this that costs, well, it doesn't, now I'm aging myself, but it used to cost 25 cents, right? Or a soda, a sugar sweetened beverage at the start of the day with something like, you know, a pastry, and it's just not nutrient dense enough. It's not the type of nutrition that growing bodies require and need. But yet, well, damn them for sitting down to the to the other option, which is incredibly nutritious. And it's the same thing for adults. I can't tell you how many of my patients will say, I will not sit down to a breakfast of toast or a breakfast of cereal because that's no good for me. But then they will stop at whatever coffee place on the way and get their coffee that has 2 pumps of vanilla and whatever is in that case. Cake pops, this, that. Again, there's nothing wrong with those items. They're just not nutrient dense, and it's not actually setting the stage for a productive day. It is sugar that goes in. It's hard for any of us if your breakfast is
you
like
sleep by noon.
literally, right? And so, but it's not the discussion that we're having.
And so earlier you had mentioned yogurt. You said, let's take yogurt. What was your example there? Because I think I'm following you now.
So there was this conversation around yogurt being filled with added sugars and how no one should have yogurt because it's really high in added sugars. Here's the thing, is that there are a variety of yogurts out there.
Just like there's a variety of packaged foods. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like you just said, there's some packaged foods, there's some cereals that, man, my kid's getting all the vitamins, they're getting all grain, and then there's some package, sorry.
So, no, totally fine. So there was this discussion around the added sugars in yogurt. And now the understanding is that yogurt could be protective when it comes to metabolic health because of its nutrient profile. So, in cases where people are experiencing insulin resistance or the early stages of type 2 diabetes, yogurt may be a wonderful thing to add. Why? Because it's protein rich, calcium, vitamin D, potassium. Oh my goodness. 10 years ago, it was run from yogurt. Now, it's add this to your pattern of eating. And so it's like all of these conversations are swirling in misinformation and the nuance is lost.
Well, with the nuance being lost, I think for myself and our listeners, that's one of the tools is to hit that pause button before we make food binary. We make food good or bad. You know, and also to hit the pause button before we judge what other people are eating. And to hold, I love that word, nutrient dense. Like, how do I make whatever choice I'm making as most nutrient dense choice as possible? So I can, like, hear you saying I can have my pizza, you know, but do I know the nutrients it's giving me? And let's celebrate that. I'm gonna go a step further and say, can we celebrate that?
Yes.
Can we celebrate what each other is eating instead of condemn it? You know? So celebrate that, hey, yeah, this pizza does have, you know, these nutrients, and so that means I have to become aware. But then also, and if I just make a couple additions, it will even add these other pieces to it.
It'll round it out.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
and
exactly
so
right.
it's so that's not so it's not a bad choice or bad food, but that you're looking more of that holistic,
Right.
And holding the both and with our food choices, increasing our awareness of our food choices. But that big one of not projecting our food choices onto other people, because that just perpetuates that whole binary system.
That's
I mean, what do
exact-
you think? Am I hitting it?
You're absolutely hitting it. You know what it made me think of, Jody, is we're really clear when it comes to substances what is too much, right? But we don't have that with food.
What do you talk to me more when substance is too much?
So, for example, with alcohol, it's the most socially acceptable drug that
So
people
for real.
engage in.
Yeah.
We're clear that once anyone has passed the threshold of 2 drinks, that they're moving into the category where they're having more drinks. And once someone has passed the threshold of 4 drinks, they're moving into the category where they are excessively drinking. We're also super clear that alcohol is not actually conferring or giving us a health benefit.
Come on.
However, when it comes to the act of eating food or drinking beverages, it becomes murky because of packages and claims.
The gray area.
And the gray area and the disinformation and misinformation. So then we're like, is a potato good or not?
Right.
Should I be having celery juice every morning or not?
Yeah.
Do I eat farm raised or wild? Should I become vegan? Because we're not clear about the act of eating on the whole and its impact on our body, because it goes all the way back to this conflict that we're getting in the messaging about nutrition.
Yeah. I think the conflict that we're getting, and we don't look at food as a holistic thing. I like what you said before, that we have a cellular connection to our food.
Yes.
You know, I don't just eat for for nutrients, you know, that there's tradition reasons, cultural reasons, there's all these connections. And so to look at food holistically and the holistic things that it brings me, and then deeper understanding of the nutritional value, and trying to intentionally step away from that good or bad.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you're in the celebration, I want to be clear. When I'm in a celebration, I am not modifying, nor do I ask my patients to modify.
Right.
Right? That's the celebration.
Yeah.
Where do we modify? When there is a health-related reason to modify.
Okay.
Right.
Here's the challenge. Most of us have a health-related reason to modify.
Right.
So true.
Right.
Right?
So true.
And so that's where I'm saying we have to get certain and we have to be clear that culturally relevant, accessible, affordable, nutrient-dense options. Let me say that again. Culturally relevant, accessible, affordable, nutrient-dense options are the center of our plates.
That's
Okay.
yeah.
I
That's
like
the
that.
tool. That's the tool right there.
That's it.
And that we're aware that my culturally relevant, you know, nutrient dense option might be different than yours.
That's right.
And that doesn't make mine better and yours worse.
That's right.
You know, but that I talk about it in, hey, for me, this is, you know, that choice. But for others, it may be different because of their access, because of how they were brought, their experiences. Then if we started messaging it that way and looking at it that way, we could have much richer conversations.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And stop thinking, that sometimes
Kale
it's
is not
good
the
bad.
only way. There are
Right.
plenty of greens. Kale is
Tell
delicious.
Please let it not be the
But
only
kale
way.
is not the only way, you know, and that I think also gets back to stepping out of what is the normalized dominant.
Absolutely.
Come
And so
on.
even when you said that, I want our listeners to check in with yourself. When Maya said, you know, kale is not the only way, I think that evokes two reactions, like, yes, it is, or no, it's not. Yeah, she said it. You know, but again, there's some foods we have just bought into are so good or so bad. And I'm okay if there's America, again, that's okay if that works for you.
Right.
But are we then projecting that onto others
Right.
that then help perpetuate this binary regarding food?
That's right.
Good.
Yeah. Nita, bring us home.
Capacity builders, we've done it again. Another one in the books. This is so good. Maya Feller, thank you so much for joining us today. Your insight is beyond amazing. So thank you for sharing with our audience all of that good information. And community, this is us building capacity within ourselves, within our community, and within our institutions. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to hang out with us, and we so appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one.